Well, we're just a few short weeks away from the first concert this year with the Cabrillo Festival Orchestra. And it's a moment where I get ready for everything. I've been studying this music for quite some time now, and I wanted to share with you just a few little behind the scenes um, points that a conductor has to see when they're studying a score. I have a few little things that are always with me wherever I travel. The first and foremost is my very, very good friend, the metronome, which is something that I use often in preparing the scores that I have to conduct, just to keeping the time or the pulse and trying to internalize the pulse of the music that I have to conduct. It's actually funny because quite often I get asked in the airports to explain what this little machine is, and how come I have it with me. So then I have to go into a conversation with someone at the airport, explaining to them what I do and why do I need it, and demonstrate how it works. So all of that is fun, but in reality I use it to prepare the scores and the music that I have to conduct. Then of course I have my trusted pencils here that I have to use. And speaking of pencils, I have oftentimes people ask me if I like to use colors or if I like to use any kind of visual aid help. And every score is different. Some scores require some attention to a specific technical detail that I have to make sure that I remember when I'm conducting. And for that, my good friend red is here, or blue, depending on the instruments that I'm using it. But I try to actually mark very, very little in the scores that I conduct, because it helps me see the music a little bit easier. And I'm not saying that everyone should do that. This is what works for me, and I think that's just fine. Of course, I have my ruler here. That's the way that I divide the musical phrases in the score, by measures and by gestures. And the ruler usually divides, the points of arrival and departure of a musical phrase, and then I use different ways of marking points of arrival or points of climactic or dramatic points. I also have some other things that are always with me that I use. I always have my noise cancelling headphones that I use less for listening music, but just to cancel any outside noise. I always travel with those. I also always have my journal, that is my conducting journal, in which I write thoughts about the rehearsals that I will have, and plan rehearsals, and try to have a very good, detailed sense of what I have to rehearse and for how long, and everything in my opinion has to be prepared very, very carefully in advance in order for it to allow some flexibility. Then I also have manuscript paper for anything that I feel like I want to try to write out. If there's a passage that it's difficult for me to understand, I try to write it out, and I try to make it in my own handwriting so that I can visualize it better that way, and understand it better. So that these things are always with me. But of course, most important is the music itself that I travel with. And in preparation for Cabrillo, I have to say I've been traveling for a few weeks now with an extra suitcase, just to be able to have all the scores that I need to have. And as much as I love technology, there's nothing like paper that connects me to the music that I'm conducting. So I'm looking today, I've been looking at basically everything. I study everything at the same time. So I don't focus on one piece one day or another piece. I like to jump around a lot, and it's just the way that my brain works this way. So I was looking, there are three things here that I've been looking right now. The first one is Michael Gandolfi's Points of Departure, which actually begins the festival. And it's a piece that it's fascinating because it's a piece that I have conducted in the past, but in a very different version. And this new version that he wrote for us, for Cabrillo, is something that I'm doing for the first time. So it's fun to compare and to look at the different instrumentation choices that he's made, and some changes as well in the writing to accommodate a larger orchestra. So it's always fun to do that and to compare. It's in its concept, the piece itself is also very interesting because he begins with a musical thread or a musical line that abruptly ends at one point, and then the next movement begins just a few seconds before the previous movement was finished, and then goes into a completely different direction. So in a way, it's like a tree that keeps stemming branches from each other. So it's as it says in the title, points of departure refers to this idea that you continue a musical thought from different points while always referring back to where you've left. So this is it's a fascinating piece, and I love Michael's music. I've loved it for many years. I've known him for a few years, so I can't wait to conduct it again. I always look forward to that. Then it's another piece that I actually had the pleasure of conducting a little while ago that I'm very, very excited to bring to actually the United States for the first time. And this is Gerald Barry's Piano Concerto. And this, you know, people often ask me how does one conduct a concerto, and who is in charge of what happens? And you know, because you have a soloist and you have the orchestra and then you have the conductor as well, so there's always a negotiation into who has the musical the strongest musical input into what will happen and the musical decisions. And for me, concerti and pieces that you play with a soloist, in a way, I have to know that much better so that I can really understand and get into the mind of the performer to be able to accommodate whatever is necessary to be done to achieve the best performance and to be in the best supporting role that I can be, which is my job as a conductor. So this piece I've conducted in Ireland a few months ago, and it's a piece that I immediately fell in love with because of its unique and quirky elements, if I can put them this way, but it's also a really fun, there's something really fun for me when a piece is incredibly challenging. I don't know, I'm always attracted to challenge in music, and this was of an incredible virtuosity, both from the orchestra, from the soloist, and from the conductor as well. And I thought, what a better way to start my first season than to present something that is incredibly virtuosic for everyone, so that we can feature the virtuosity of the orchestra and of Jason Harding, our soloist, as well. So this is Gerald Barry's Piano Concerto. And then the last piece that I was looking at, it's actually a piece that we commissioned for this first season, and this is by Karim Alzand, another very good friend of mine, a composer that lives in Houston right now, and this piece will actually end the festival. It's called The Prisoner, and it's a piece that is very close to my heart because it's a piece that Karim and I have been talking about for a few years. And he first, a few years ago, I approached him and I just asked him a silly question basically, and I said, Karim, if you had the chance to write anything you wanted to, what would that be? And he told me back then about this incredible idea he had for the piece and the incredible story behind it. And then it took a couple of years for me to be able to actually commission him to write this piece. And I'm so grateful that now we are down to the last few days before both of us actually hear this piece and the entire world hears this magnificent piece. It's very, very sentimental. It's very heartfelt. true and purest form of art, and that is art that speaks of a personal experience. It speaks of a deep personal emotion, and I'm so grateful that I have this opportunity to bring this to light, to bring this to help in its birth, so to speak. Well, I should get back to my studying and to getting everything ready, but I'm so happy that you will be joining me, and you will be joining us in Cabrillo for this first season, where we will look at all this incredible music that is here, just has been traveling all over the world with me, as I'm trying to get it into my head and in my heart. Thank you again, and hope to see you very soon.